Okay, so that's 10 minutes. So before we get up, let's just stretch a bit. Yeah, so we can do that twisting exercise. So here, obviously the hips are immobilized, so. So try and let the head go just a bit further, so you're sort of looking behind yourself. I just feel the twist and the tension in those muscles in the lower back. So when the muscles work, we want them to sort of twist, to spiral a bit as well. So they don't just contract, they contract and twist. And like that Bacon quote that I put in the email, I mean, that could be like our manifesto, really. So when you start working, everything changes. And you can't imagine the change, so you have to work in order to see what's the other side of it. So you get into it as you work, you get into it. So that's the sense in which the mind has to be quiet. It just has to be present so that it can really disappear into the exercise. Yeah, so normally when we do an exercise, the mind, in an attempt to make sure that it's getting it right, will try and sort of remain aloof. So it has a vantage from which it can espy what you're doing. So here we just really want to get right in the thick of it, right in the middle, in the Dantian, Min Meng area. So it's hot, it's not cool. It's getting hotter and hotter. Yeah, so when the mind can stay with it, then it's like you're spinning a thread. The Chinese, they love that image of, like pulling the thread from the silk cocoon, the cocoon of the silkworm. You have to be so even with your pressure, otherwise it will snap. And so it's the mind that creates that evenness, and that's the tension. So we need a core of tension in order to hold it all together. But obviously not a sort of locked, hard tension, but a really sort of elastic one. And it's just our ability to just keep our mind with that thread as time is unwinding, is unfolding. We just have to have our mind on each millimeter so that it can stay unbroken. And it's that unbrokenness that actually creates that inner tension. Like, you know, like winding up a ball of wool. You know, when I was a kid, my mum used to knit, and she used to get me to hold the sheaves of wool, and she would wind it all up into a ball so that she could knit with it. So it's got that sense that you're sort of you're making something. So spinning a thread or weaving a fabric is, you know, it's an image that's used in all cultures. And then just stretching over the knees, just feeling the lower back, just being careful. So, and remember, it doesn't matter how far down you go. It's all in the quality of the mind, really. That's the thing that we're trying to adjust. You can normally guarantee that a person's mind is their own worst enemy. So when they leave it up to their mind, they get everything wrong. They make the wrong decisions, the wrong choices. They do things wrong because it's always tinged with anxiety, yeah? And it's forceful. And so we just want a really fluid mind, a mind that's sort of just almost not in control of itself. So much more of energy, really. And then just coming forwards and just placing the hands on the ground, like when we crouch, when we squat down, just feeling the ground. So what we're trying to do is press into the ground, but not in order to push the ground away from us, but in order to bring the ground up into our spine. So a sense that I'm just pressuring, I'm squeezing into the ground a little bit and just beckoning that ground up into my spine. And then I can just let it travel down to the sacrum and the tail and then up into the skull. And just feel what's required to make it happen. It won't just happen because the mind, being our own worst enemy, is always inhibiting reality. It's always trying to keep things the way it thinks they are. So here you have to use a bit of spirit. So you have to sort of intend it a little bit in order to make it happen, in order to break through your own stupidity, your own inertia. And just try and get the press down to come not so much from the arms trying to straighten as from the belly tightening. So the muscles in the belly are pressing the hands into the ground. So it can be as vigorous or as subtle as you like. And then you can just sort of pace with it and just feel it. You know, we're just trying to just feel the muscles working, but also feel the ground getting into the bones. Yeah, so we're always just trying to awaken the spirit, and especially an aspect of spirit that I call libido. So it's like an erotic aspect. And so we want everything that we do to be a little bit sensual and erotic. Yeah, it's like it's arousing. It's arousing energies that normally slumber because we don't really need them. But if we can bring them alive a little bit, then we can invest everything that we do with a little element of that and just give everything that we do a sparkle. So we're trying to invest the world with life and beauty, truth and beauty. And then just twist the spine, just get around. Yeah, so we're just trying to get the spine into it, the spine as this sort of instrument of erotic energy. And then the other side. Just feel how it's really quite different when you've got a twist. So when you're sort of much more single weighted, so unsymmetrical, then it feels really quite different. It's got more spirit, more danger, more potential. It's like it's trying to burst out of something all the time. And then just behind, so here just really arch backwards with your spine a little bit to get the pressure. So now it's those muscles in the lower back that we're just using. And just feel the heart and the thymus just lifting to the sky. Yeah, so just feel what's above as well as what's below. So you've got the floor beneath us and we have the ceiling above us. And if we were outside, then we'd have the sky above us. And that sky would feel very different depending upon whether it was cloudy, whether it was bright and sunny, which time of day it was. Yeah? So all of these things can be registered as energies and pressures. Feel the shoulder blades really pinching together. So you just stay in it and just breathe. Use the breathing to build up some sort of internal pressure. And then just back. Okay. And then just bringing the feet up and just place them. So before you get up, just place them on the ground like we did the hands. And just feel them, feel the ground. Now, when we place the hands, they naturally have like a cupping shape. So there's naturally a sense that the middle of my palm is trying to draw something out of the ground. Whatever I touch, it's as though you're receiving in the middle of your palm and actually touching with the outside edges and the fingertips. So just try and feel that here. Yeah, so the middle of your foot, the instep, or what's it called, the bubbling well. You can think of that as just sucking at the ground a little bit. Partly to draw the ground up and partly to bring your outside edges and your toes and your heels into the ground. So there's a communication going on. It's not just a hard surface upon which you're resting. There's an exchange across that interface, a lot of exchange. Okay, now that way that the feet were, we just want them to be like that, especially when we work, yeah? So that the feet are really down there, really sucking at the ground and listening to the ground. So very different from just these two things that are there to hold me up, yeah? So my feet are just really hungry for energy from the ground, from the floor. And just feel how when you mind's in the dantian and there's a little bit of pressure there, a little bit of a pull. So just think of the dantian like a ring muscle, like a sphincter, and you're just drawing it in, you're tightening it. And that is squeezing back into the min meng, which is fanning out. So you need to do that to actually get that sense of the feet. It's almost like I want to get my head down there. I want to get my mind in any part of my body. Yes, that's what, so it really needs, the legs really need to be integrated. And it just occurred to me that, remember when we started the figures of 8? It was about 93, end of 92, 93. So we really got into them when we moved to Highgate. Yeah, so it's just basically this exercise, yeah. So John had this Sing Yi teacher called Master Xie, who I think there's a video of, I think Carlo put a video of him up on YouTube. And he had a friend called Master Du, who was famous in Taiwan because he had actually killed people in competition. Yeah. He'd had fights and accidentally, on purpose, killed a person. But he brought him along and said he was really short. And they were sort of watching John. So what this Master Du wanted to do, he wanted to teach someone, but the Chinese are not stupid. They want to make sure that, they can invest their time in you, that you're not just a time waster, you will actually practice and you do have the talent, yeah? And so what he did, he just did this and said to John, okay, you do that. So this was the test. And John said, I just had to close my eyes and just imagine I was him and just do what he was doing. And he did it, yeah? And so Master Du says, oh, good. And then he taught him, yeah? But remember when we started doing it and, we were copying John and we're all doing this, a big top circle and a tiny bottom circle, yeah? Because that's the easiest thing to do. It's easier just to flick the wrist here to bring it under. And he was always saying, no, the bottom circle of the figure of 8 has to be at least as big as the top circle, if not bigger, yeah? And I just realized it's just an image of the body, really. So the middle of the figure of 8 where it passes through is the sort of dantian min meng. And the bottom part of the figure of 8 is just the spine plus the legs, the spine from the min meng down, incorporating the legs. And then the top circle of the figure of 8 is just the spine up from the min meng, yeah? So let's just try. So just really feeling as though here you're getting underneath your foot. And then this is just cutting the top of your head. And then again, just slipping under the foot. And where it crosses over in the middle, that's the min meng. So here you're going down, you're turning this way a little bit and just going down the leg. So you're just really feeling the leg as just that continuous extension of the spine with no seeming break where the sacrum starts and the leg stops. So just getting through that juncture, that sacroiliac joint, that's the difficult bit where the upper and the lower body join up. So just see it going all the way down the leg under the foot and then back up. And it sort of goes down on the outside of the leg and the back of the leg, and it comes up on the inside and the front. So you're very much enclosed within this figure of 8. Yeah, and as you do it, as you continue, as you work, it intensifies, and it intensifies by tightening up. It gets smaller. So you actually have to get sunk and really get down in order to stay within this figure of 8. So it tightens up as the thing intensifies, it will tend to tighten up, which will tend to make it smaller. And again, all the time, that image of being inside the pool, of being in water. Yeah, so you're having to inch your way along this path because it's difficult. You know, you can't just be slack and just have a wandering mind. Your mind has to be with this movement, otherwise it just won't happen. So you need every part of you involved in the activity. You can't reserve a part of yourself for you. And then just the other one. So the working is building up the pressure, rousing the spirit, and intensifying. So the fire is beginning to rage. So here you're getting down into the ground. So just imagine those Francis Bacon paintings, you know, the figures in all those contorted agonies, you know, where their faces are melting off, yeah? So that's what you become basically, you know, you're passing through all the time, passing through all these intense states, and you just become melty and fluid, but viscous, just full of this erotic passion that's just bursting to express. Yeah, so what we just have to make sure that, you know, for Spirit's sake, for the sake of the Holy Spirit, we must choose madness or craziness over depression. Yeah. I saw a documentary last night on Sinead O'Connor, and that's exactly what she's done all through her career. She's just chosen madness over depression. And consequently, she's just remarkable, you know. And her final act of defiance she's become a Muslim. Yeah, it's beautiful. Ugh. And then let's just try them both together. Yes, this is often just a bit too much. You know? It's like you really do go crazy if you do this properly. It's like Nietzsche. Nietzsche chose madness over depression. So did Bacon. So does any artist, really. Ugh. Ooh. Okay. Okay, so enough of enough. Okay. So just back to riding horse. Just feel them in Meng. And just feel the feet, you know, they're pumping like this, they're expanding and contracting, or better still, like this, yeah? So there's something about the work that starts a rhythm, starts a pump. So it starts normally as a singular pump, you know, it's just one big pump. But then when the intensity builds up, it will actually double up, you know, it'll do alternate ones. Okay, so let's just try, if you've got a wall there that's not cluttered with pictures, I hate pictures. So, unless they were really good. So what we want to do is just sort of, just almost like we're trying to walk through the wall. You're really just sort of, again, just squeezing the muscles. You know, just when I use the word squeeze, what we don't want to do is use the muscles. So I don't tighten the muscle in order to have this lever action. It's like with a tube of toothpaste. If I want the toothpaste to come out the end, I do that. Yeah, I don't push the tube upwards, I squeeze the tube. So it's that same sense here, like you're squeezing muscles in order to get them to work, in order to get energy to come out of them. And there's a sense that I'm trying to almost push the wall over, yeah, with the strength of my legs. But really what I'm trying to do is to get the ground to come up my legs into my Dan Qian and get the wall to come down my arms into my Dan Qian. So I'm sort of becoming porous. But it's not an easy porosity. It's a porosity that you really have to work to get it, to get the energy through. It's not enough just to relax. You've got to really work, but in this sort of passionate, impassioned, elastic way. So we're not using hardness. So when I say squeeze the muscle, I just mean use it softly but intensely. So a lot of intensity, a lot of spirit, but no hardness. Yeah, and when the arms get tired, which they will, just bring your forearms onto the wall. So now it's just elbows, really. So this is even more intense because I've shortened it. When I shorten, if I could discard my shins and just be doing this on my knees, it would be even more intense, yeah? And just feel the spine. It sort of really cleanses the spine and it brings the heart up. So our heart is the part of us that's depressed. Yeah, it's not really the mind. We're disheartened. You know, we all live in a state of disheartenment, largely because we've lost nature. You know, so nature is now a pleasant walk in the morning with the dog, whereas it used to be a time of like real danger and intensity, and you needed such knowledge to deal with it. So now it's and then just put the back to the wall. Again, just let yourself settle. Yeah, so what we'd like is for the lower back to just flatten against the wall, so the lordosis to disappear. So like we're trying to get the min meng to kiss the wall. And it will if you just keep it there. Yeah. So here you can really feel, you know, your own sinking. It's like you're going to start falling down the wall, just slowly drifting down the wall. So just feel the sort of strength that you need in the legs just to hold that, to reach that equilibrium. And can I relax the legs more and more and more? I really want to be at that trembling edge when if I was to relax the legs just even a tiny bit more, I would start sliding down the wall. So that's the point of equilibrium that we really want to sort of investigate and have that when we're standing. So that, because, you know, John always used to say, basically force is just too much energy. Yeah, so if you're standing there and you're not at that state of equilibrium, then you're basically using force. And we like force because it means that we're safe and the mind can go AWOL. The mind can just think to itself. Okay, now just shifting from one side to the other again, like you're sort of giving the wall a bit of a massage with your hips. And again, it's erotic, you know, it's this groin area, yeah. You know, if we were younger, we'd get proper aroused. Just cast your mind back. But again, it's the figure of 8. So just feel it going out of the min meng and down, and yeah. And I can get it all the way down and under the foot, and then it will naturally come up the front of the leg. And just this sense that, you know, if you can keep your mind with it, not in an analytical way, you're not sort of watching it dispassionately, you're really passionate, you know, you're really doing this as though your life depended upon it. Then when you can do that, then it develops, yeah? And it will always take you somewhere you haven't been before. Yeah, so the ego loves the status quo and the spirit hates it. The spirit is always trying to take you somewhere interesting, somewhere exciting. Yeah, so at every point, at every second, you choose madness, you choose spirit over depression, over ego. Doesn't have to be mad like loony bin mad. It's just crazy, you know. When you say, when you call someone crazy in a good way, like a kid, yeah. When a kid just gets a bit crazy and they can't stop it. I can't help it, Dad. It's just beautiful. So you want to get it to the point where you just can't help it. It doesn't need any help. It will do its thing if you let it. But you need to give it a bit of encouragement. Yeah? You need to enhearten in order to lift the disheartenment. So when we're in the forest, John was often talking about disheartenment and enheartenment. Okay, so now let's just come out of it and then just back. Yeah, so all the teacher can do is sort of give an impression of what you need to do. And then you need to get it to the point where it's indescribable what you're doing. It's so involved and complex. It's only complex if you try and describe it. So it's the spirit, it's the energy that drives it rather than the mind. So it's the same, when we're meditating, in a sense, we're just trying to get to like a state of reverie. Yeah, I looked reverie up in, it's basically from rêver in the French, to dream. Yeah? It just says a state of dreamy meditation, which I thought was beautiful. Yeah, and so this feeling that your mind is just not thinking in words, it's not trying to keep some order by talking. The words have stopped, and that allows the images to flood your being. So the memories and the things coming up from the unconscious and the subconscious, they just flood your being, and associated with each one, there's a feeling, you've got pins and needles, you're tingling, you're hyperventilating, just from this onslaught. I remember when, John, he told me that, because he was really clever as a kid. His dad taught him to read when he was like ridiculously young. And so his dad managed to get him into school early, like 2 years early. And they found out before he reached the last year of primary school. So he ended up in that final class for 3 years running. And he said it was just so boring. And he says, that's when I learned to daydream. When he said it at the time, I thought he meant daydreaming in a bad way, but now I realize he meant in a good way. Yeah? So the words stop and the images start. And so this is why we're talking to ourselves all the time, is to keep reality out. Yeah? Okay, let's just try just a little bit of the pulling. So again, we just want to feel the spirit. Yeah? So as I sink into this foot, it becomes full, obviously, and this foot becomes empty. And I want to feel that emptying as an opening up. Yeah? So then that opening can then turn the corner and start gathering, and it's that draws me into it. But in order to get the opening to be intense, I really have to mean it with my spirit. So it's like, something in me has to really almost get angry to force that opening, because without it, it just won't happen, because the ego has got such a grip And we ought to feel it not just in the eyes and the face and the shoulders, but in the heart. Something in my heart opens up and just swallows, like a mouth that's having to open really wide. You know, again, like those Francis Bacon's, the screams, yeah? The Pope's screaming. It's beautiful, such a beautiful image. Yeah? This absolutely repressed individual, a Pope, screaming. Something inside is just coming out. So something inside me, there's that moment where I'm terrified. It's opened up so much, I think, oh, fuck. And then that's what, in a sense, what closes it down or starts it coming back. It's just that moment of having let go for a fraction of a second. And suddenly there's no ground underneath you. You know, it's like suddenly you're in absolute danger. And that's the impulse that actually starts it closing down again. So here, ooh, fuck. And all the time, just try. If you make it too much, if it's too much in the upper body, then you'll get curvature in the lower back and you'll lose the lower body. So just all the time, keeping the min meng pressing back so that you're integrated from the floor to the top of the head. So, way. So just pulling with the leg, it's so important. When I see someone that's just pushing with the leg now, it really irritates me because it just looks so damn stupid and lazy. The only reason they're doing it is because their mind's thinking to itself, because they're not really there, they're not really doing it. This is what most people's form looks like. They're going through the motions. So, yeah, so that hollowing that makes the cave and the vacuum that sucks the world in, we want that to be more from the dantian than from the chest. So it's my dantian tightening and pulling in towards the min meng. Otherwise, I lose the legs. Ooh. Okay. So let's bring it back. Again, just that lower back, just melting down the legs, down the hamstrings. The feeling is that your buttocks are sort of melting down into your thighs. It's a difficult area, this, because, you know, we just don't have much feeling in it. It's been repressed and locked up for so long. But really would like the sacrum to be the bone that we're most aware of, because every other bone in the body refers to that. It's like the reference point. Okay, so just loosening the hips. So obviously the hips are the joints that are associated with the dantian and with the legs. Yeah, so that's where most of the tension is, if you like. Yeah. So when it's tense, there's just a split between upper and lower body. There's no real energy flow between them. So we have to use force in order to produce any movement in the outside world. Yeah, so just loosening the hips. And so particularly around the sacrum, so the sacroiliacs. Feels almost like the sacrum becomes tender, and a little bit sort of jelly-like. But in order to release, you need a core of holding on. Something has to be holding on in order for the vicinity to relax and release. Otherwise, it will just dissipate and dribble away. So there's this knot. It's like a hand, a fist in the Dan Chen. And we practice that by just breathing. Just feeling that contraction, that withdrawal. So something in your mind is just becoming mean and disappearing into itself. And then something comes back out. So you're always ready to just disappear inside. So you don't need the world, you don't need company. You don't need your friends or your partner. You can just disappear and just go into the inner sanctum. That's where you find real peace. So feel the breath like that spinning thread. So just breathe through the small hole and you'll feel the continuity. And then just pausing a little. Now we just want to do the same thing, but just reverse the breathing. So breathe out and then breathe in and suck the belly in. And then breathe out. So your breath needs to be strong enough to go against the pressure. So as you breathe in here, it becomes really intense. There's a hell of a lot of pressure. And then you really just let that go and out it flows. So real intensity and then just real relaxation. So it's work. Work is the alternation of tension and relaxation. Okay. And now let's just stepping. Yeah, so it's basically the same as just moving backwards and forwards, but just with a step. And again, just full, empty. The empty foot really reaches out like the hand reaching for the chocolates. Yeah. And if you're going to reach for a chocolate, you'd use your fingertips. You wouldn't use your whole fist, because that would just ruin all the other chocolates for everyone else. So it's very delicate. You're just putting the toe tips on the ground first, and then slowly and gently wrapping your foot around it. So, ooh. And so you come into that foot because you've closed and rounded out the leg, and that stretches the lower back. So just feel it. If you've got too much intensity, too much concentration, if you're trying too hard, it will just produce curvature here. And we want it to flatten it out. So it's quite a fine line. This real sense that my foot and my leg are just drawing me, the rest of me, down into it. So I'm sort of being channeled down, I'm disappearing into my foot. So I don't want to keep part of my mind up here looking down on it, because that will just inhibit that. So especially when you go into the back foot, but we want it to be front foot as well. Front foot's more difficult. That's when we tend to stick our bum out. So when we come into the front foot, it tends to be this, with the bum stuck out behind you. So we really want it. It's quite interesting that Tai Chi article, I sent you the pictures of. He was saying, when you're in the front foot, it feels like you're 50-50. If you try and get too much weight in the front foot, your bum just has to go either that, or you have to lean forwards like this. So just trying to keep that curvature in the lower back to the absolute minimum. So it's like a force that keeps us in. So we remain inside our cave, but we're issuing energy from the walls of that cave. Ooh. Yeah, so this is really important, because this is exactly how we should step in the form. Remember when John used to demonstrate the form? So he'd always say, step in a single weighted way. So you should be able to put your foot down and pick it up again before you bring the weight into it. And yet, if you watched him, he never did that. Yeah. So what he would do is really overextend, but not so much. But that was, I now realize, was purely in order to engage that sort of swallowing spirit. Because it's not enough just to step politely and then move your weight into it. Yeah, you have to really passionately feel that bit of ground that you're drawing yourself into. So there's always a sense when you're doing the form that you are overstepping. There's a point where you just would, if you were to stop there, you'd fall. You can't hold that point. And of course, if you can hold the point, there's no real equilibrium. So equilibrium isn't a steady point. It's always tottering. And if you were to sort of stop everything, it would fall, it would collapse. So the equilibrium that we're into, that we want, is an equilibrium that requires movement. So the movement, that thread, that elastic thread, the spinning thread of time, is what maintains the stability. the fact that our mind is with this thread. And so very much like the tentacle of the octopus. Remember when it just reached out, it's so delicate, just touch things. Ooh. It's like, Francis Bacon again, he said that I don't want my pictures to represent anything. They're not pictures of something. I want the paint that's applied to directly impact the viewer's nervous system. Yeah? So it's not even the image, it's more like the gesture. And he was gay, of course, and so he had these, he hated the word gay and he hated effeminate men. He preferred the sort of gangster type that would fuck him hard and hurt him. Yeah? But he had those affectations. And so, I recently went to the museum in Tel Aviv and I didn't realize it, but there was a Francis Bacon on the wall. I just turned and saw it. And it was like those brushstrokes had been applied to my naked body. It was erotic. Yeah. I've never felt anything like it. So it directly impacted me. And then I realized it was a picture of a face. Yeah. But before that, that paint was already on my body. Yeah. So what do you need to do with your mind to intend to get that leg to go back and grab the ground? It's not easy. It requires a certain energy level and a certain playfulness, which we tend to lose with age. So we're all stuck in the mud. It's a good image. But you can use that mud. It is like pulling yourself out. The sound it would make. So it's like that. Every time you pick the foot off the ground, it's like it's sucking it out of the mud, and then so something primal, like the primeval mud, from which if you study like the mud in a pond, it's just full of all these creatures you didn't realize existed. Yeah, it's full of life, but it's primitive life, and that's what we are. At our best, we're at our best when we are our most primitive, when we're at our most animalistic. So, okay, so let's finish. Okay, so just withdrawing into your cave. The cave of the Dantian, the cave of the torso, cave of the body. And the mind is just still, but the energy is moving. You know, when the mind starts chatting, then the energy stops. So you've got a choice. It's very simple, really. You can either go with energy or you can go with self. Remember one Sunday, John was waxing lyrical, holding court. And one of the newcomers that didn't know any better just said to him, why is it, John, that whenever you talk, you're always talking about yourself? Yeah, something none of us would have dared say, obviously. And he just got angry and he just said, because I've never found anything else quite so interesting. Yeah, so that's self, that's ego. Yeah, we're with this because everything else doesn't quite match up. Yeah. And so it's an insult. Every time you withdraw into your own thoughts, you are insulting the world. And the best thing the world could do is slap you. And in the old days, it would have done. Yeah. People just wouldn't have stood for it. Yeah, so most people that are alive now, 200 or 300 years ago, they'd be dead. Yeah. Either because, because most of us are alive because of medicine. Yeah? I'm alive because of medicine. All of my children are alive because of medicine. If it wasn't for modern medicine, we'd all be dead. Yeah. Or we would all have had to rouse our spirit miraculously in that moment of death claiming us in order to make a stand and actually live through it. So you'd have developed character and soul and real strength as a consequence. Okay, so let's just bring the foot up. And again, just keep the tightness here, yeah? Because when we stand and straighten the legs, it's always, the bum always flicks out a bit, and we just want to minimize that. You can't stop it altogether, but you can sort of introduce a force that is trying to bend the legs and bring the bum back in. And that's just a little bit of tension here. Yeah, so just think of the army when they stand to attention. Yeah? They just basically, they stick their bum out, they produce real strength in the lower back, which produces lordosis. They thrust the chest up, they pull the shoulder blades back, and they look up a little bit. So they're sticking the chin forwards. Yeah. So that's all in order to get them into readiness for charging into battle. Yeah. So just cutting off from their better sense. And, we're trying to almost like do the opposite. We're trying to shrink down into our posture. Okay, so let's finish.